It is actually, good afternoon. Welcome back. Although we are slightly late, the instruction has been to go and grab the coffee and tea and come back. I think it went from the mic to our ears and changed. So we're going to have a panel discussion, which will be slightly shorter because of the delays in earlier sessions. And I'd like, without further ado, to invite our panelists, starting from the Minister of Agriculture and Animal Resources, Dr. Gerardine Mukeshimana. Please welcome. And then the chairperson for the Private Sector Federation, Mr. Robert. Last but not least, Mr. Daniel Gies, Chief of Party, Hingawezi. My name is Gerardine. I'll be moderating this panel conversation. So, I'd like to start by asking you to introduce yourselves. Yes, the minister is known, but one word or two about what you want the audience to know and why rural transformation is important. So I'll go around to each one of you, and then if you're using the mics, there's one to you. So, Minister, who are you?
Good afternoon again. My name is Gerardine Mukeshimana. He had said that we talk about what we are passionate about, but he didn't mention it. So I used to be passionate about it, but I think now I'm switched to being passionate about development. So this topic of rural revitalization is very critical because the rural areas is where our food is produced, but also the rural areas and the people living there, they are custodians of our sustainability as a human being, because the environmental sustainability, the food, these are things that are going to be there as long as we are there. So I think this topic is very critical, and it is showing the interconnectivity of so many things that are needed for the sustainability of us as humankind. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Robert.
Thank you, moderator. My name is Robert Fakulera. I'm a businessman, and as you heard, I'm the chairman of the Private Sector Federation. My life from school, I went to business, and I've been in business for a very long time. I like my work as a businessman and so on. So on the topic, the rural support for development is very important for us as a business people. That's where we get the market, that's where we get the raw materials, that's where we get food. And in return, they also get our products produced from industries and other tradable products. So we need each other, we need the rural areas to grow, maybe for just a small, experience. You know, in the rural areas, we have agriculture, and the agriculture is in almost 4 seasons throughout the year. So we business people, we know when we get money and we know when we don't get money. So you can understand the importance of agriculture and the rural areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, Daniel.
Thank you very much, moderator, for the introduction. First, before I even start talking about myself, I want to thank the Minister for her kind invitation to be on this panel. Thank you. I also want to thank USAID for the kind words of encouragement before participating on their behalf in this panel. My name is Daniel Rees. I manage here the USAID Feed the Future Ingaweze project, which actually is an activity about $33 million over 5 years. We partner with the private sector, with IFPRI, and with Rwanda Agricultural Board. I can see my colleague Dr. Patrick there. We implement a project that combines agricultural productivity and agricultural market linkages to create better nutrition opportunities for Rwandan women and children in particular. So of course, USAID supports us with the Feed the Future initiative, but our key partners in this country are private sector and government. And here they are on this panel with me, so that is really great. For myself, I grew up in the United States to German parents, but I grew up in a rural community outside of Detroit, Michigan. And for those of you who know anything about Detroit, you know that it used to be the Motor City where cars were manufactured, about 2 million people population in the 70s and 80s. Catastrophic decline of population due to, I guess, deindustrialization or total economic collapse of Detroit, and the population went to 800,000, which had a huge impact on the rural counties and communities around that city where I grew up. So when we talk about rural revitalization, actually we're seeing this in Michigan now, where things are picking up, and we're seeing it in places, I think, like Rwanda, where government and private sector initiatives around innovation, digitalization, delivery of information and services is, I think, really having an impact. And I look forward to talking about that, moderators, who go through our questions.
Yes, thank you very much, Daniel. Just keep the mic because I'll go back to you to set the frame around unique barriers to rural and urban communities. What do you think makes rural communities so different from urban communities in terms of revitalization?
I was afraid you were going to ask me that question first. You did. Well, I think there are 3 key challenges, and they are actually highlighted in the reports that the Honorable Prime Minister just introduced with the Minister. And these are really the challenges of access to information, access to governance, and that includes education, access to government services, and access to markets. Rural populations, by definition, are highly dispersed in comparison to urban communities. And I think depopulation happens, particularly by the young from these areas, because of the lack of access to these 3 key functions of, I would even say, human interrelationships. People need to be able to learn, to gain information, to interact with each other. This is inherently harder in rural communities. And so I think we talk later about solutions or ideas, but these to me are really the 3 key challenges related to rural depopulation and challenges to revitalization.
Thank you. Just to bring you on board, if you have ideas or thoughts or questions, please hold them. I'll be coming to you, time permitting, to bring you into the conversation. Minister, I'm coming to you with a little bit of controversial question around the relationships between urban and rural life. You mentioned in your statement how rural life sustains life in urban and in other places. But we know that urban areas have the lion's share of the capital, just like Robert mentioned. That's where the locations of regulations and politics sits. The lawyers, the lobbyists are in cities. Don't you think there are some elements of exploitation in that relationship, rural and urban?
Thank you. I don't think that it's an exploitation relationship. I think rather it's a symbiotic relationship. Robert has mentioned that they get the raw material from the rural areas, and then they bring back what they process back to the rural areas. They know where there is money in the rural, and they know where there's no money. And I think urban and the rural areas, they both need each other, because in the rural areas they produce food, they do what they do, but if the money doesn't flow from the lawyers and the bureaucratic people that you think of, it will be hard for the rural area to survive as well. So I think Rwanda is a small country, so I don't expect us to be having such terrible relationships that you are mentioning, because it's easy to. They were showing us that you move from rural to towns and then to cities, and then there was a driving distance of 2 hours to get to towns and so on. I guess in Rwanda, in 2 hour time you get to Kigali, so it's. I think the life is much easier that way. So I do believe both rural and cities or towns, they need each other.
Yeah, you are right. I think in Rwanda it's not that separated. But for example, the example which Dr. Feng shared, where in his village, they brought some massive infrastructure, which was totally useless because the real people were not involved. That was what I was trying to refer to globally. And the next question was, not necessarily in Rwanda, but globally, how do we redress this imbalance in power through governance? How do we correct that between the rural and the urban areas?
I think the key word here is the governance, because in his presentation he also showed issues of decentralization, issues of coordination of different things that are happening in the rural space. He mentioned issues of accountability. So I think the governance is the most important thing in all of these things that we are discussing, because when you look at different sectors or sub-sectors that were mentioned, again, they are needed in the rural space for the rural space to be viable and to provide the services that is supposed to be providing. So I think the key thing here is a governance that is capable to drive the transformation that we want, but at the long term, if the rural space is developing, I guess the rural space also can reshape back the governance that is appropriate to the space. Because, I mean, the more educated people that you get, the more empowered people that you get, the more they are capable for asking that specific, that accountability that was mentioned, the more the governance gets improved. So it keeps being in a kind of circle, but each one improving the other.
Maybe I can add a little bit on what the Minister said. On this side, what has happened is that definitely what has mastered is right. The participation of government, the government balancing the rural and urban areas. What is happening in most cities, governments are supporting cities, they are very lands for industries, they are very land for real estate, but for agriculture, it is not done like that. So you find that big investors who come in the country, they are interested mostly to do an industry, to do a real estate, but someone who is interested in agriculture cannot easily get the land. And what the government does, it avail the land, they buy the land from the people. So I would think that to balance rural and urban, as you avail land for industry, you should also avail land for large-scale agriculture. In that way, people will invest in the rural area and invest in town. So somehow to balance. Thank you.
Minister, do you want to react to that? Do we have land for farming? The country is small, we know.
I think that Rwanda gets praised because of its land tenure system. Because, I mean, the landowners, they have rights to their land and they can use it for other things that they want, as opposed to systems where the land belongs to the chief or someone else. Then most of the time the people do not have access to the land. If I give you an example, when you look at these countries that have been able to grow their food systems and the economy in general, they are the countries that started by revising their land policies, moving toward where Rwanda is today. So I think as the countries are developing, the systems will be changing, and we also know other countries where the land grabbing has been issues. So I guess the balancing of the systems and adjusting, knowing how do I work with these landowners, it's a key. But in Africa, we know that almost 80% of our food comes from the small-scale farmers. So I believe that somehow he's right, there is a way of availing land, but our government, it does buy land from their owners and give it to investors, and it is becoming expensive. So I think also, and if I give you an example, last night I told I was with someone who is heavily investing in tea in Rwanda. He's a foreigner, but his success is lying into his capacity to work with small-scale farmers, tea growers, and I think that is an example of someone who has perfected ways of working in systems like this, and he is very successful. But looking at the larger scale production, there are some policies like land consolidation to make sure that producers are making economies of scale, because when it's disaggregated, it's hard to achieve anything. But I don't think that one size fits all. So what Robert is saying is right, but also perfecting ways of working within existing systems is also okay.
Thank you, Minister. I feel like I want to press this a bit further with the audience, and I'll be coming back to you, Robert, on collective investments. So you get ready as I go to the audience. Eric, can you help me keep the mic? I want to check with the audience whether you could pick your brains on what's the missing link On the one hand, there's good stuff which the government has done. Some investors are tapping into that, like what the minister mentioned. Others, like what Robert mentioned, don't know how to go about. What's the missing link, and how do we plug that? Is that clear? From your experiences in Rwanda and outside, how do we make sure people like Robert and others who want to invest have the same facilities like an investor who wants to build cars or a factory or something? Bearing in mind the conditions and exhibit of the soil, the land. Yes, the mic is near you. Your name, where you are from, and
Musana from Rwanda Agriculture Board. I would want to come into the same question about the depopulation and the trends between investors who want big lands and small other farmers that need still to own their own lands. I think we are working under mega trends of high intensified education in the rural areas. That will, even in Rwanda, depopularize rural areas, because people will be educated, more people looking for other type of work.
And leave rural areas.
So rather than
what is the purpose?
So rather than waiting passively that's happened, we can also bring things like contract farming and things like leasing of land, so that, like the example of tea growers, they have a contract, an active contract with the farmers. That is a win-win situation, and that gives a better job to the kids, and also actively push them to another segment of the rural economy sector.
Thank you. So contract farming, just like what the minister was saying. Any other suggestions to plug that gap? There's someone here.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister.
Your name?
I'm called Peter Aganda. I'm from Britera. We do support agricultural cooperatives in different aspects. My first point is just to comment the government of Rwanda intervention de-risking the agriculture sector. We have recently heard of the launch of livestock insurance, and we also heard that there is a soon crop insurance. But
I wanted you to respond to my question.
Yes.
Because I have limited time.
That's where I'm coming.
Yeah, so go straight.
Yeah, I was saying that with the risking of agriculture should come to incentivize private sector to come in. Like for example, we have plenty of vegetables in the western, and yet we have shortage of vegetables in the eastern, in the farm, in the Gatara and whatever. I think that would be the role of private sector to come in to ensure logistics. I think in that way there should be complementarity and also a closure of the gap between urban and rural areas. Thanks.
So you think, Robert questions around access to land. You think maybe risk factors are the ones which are making them shrink, and if there was some mechanisms to de-risk, they could venture out. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes, I'm saying that the government is doing its role in de-risking it to incentivize the private sector to come in. I think that would be an opportunity for the private sector to grow.
Thank you. Any last comment this side? No one. So I come back to the panel. About collective investments. This is something you are passionate about, you've been doing, and when I approached the office, they told me since you were elected last year, you've been working on that. Can you share with us some of the initiatives you've been involved? And then go straight to the next question about how collective investments could support the creation of more rural employment opportunities in Rwanda.
Thank you. Maybe I'll just slightly introduce on this topic. Collective investment.
What is it?
It could be collective investment or forming up big companies to put up together the capital to be able to do big businesses. I'll give you some examples. In Rwanda, our businesses are small. And being small, we cannot produce massively. We cannot supply the market, even we cannot supply other markets. when we talk about exports, when we look at some products, someone will, if we looked for 2, 3, 4, 5 containers, consisting, per week or per month, sometimes they had in Rwanda. So we found it right to put people together, put capital together, select in a particular sector, and invest together. I'll give you an example. In agriculture, we put people together to do the farming and processing of rice. In Rwanda, we are importing maybe 70% of rice, though
70%.
About, because and the Ministry of Agriculture is working very hard to avail land for rice. However, still we cannot cope up with the market. Number two, it is that I think which has to be sorted out. Our farmers, because of small scale and the small, they plant a certain species of rice, and they cannot go into an expensive species of rice, which has market internationally. So we have also that kind of shortcoming. That's whereby we are looking for investment business people who have money and can be able to invest in different species of rice and process it properly, grade it. We have different grades. Today, a farmer, a small-scale farmer in Rwanda will not grade. We will just have one grade. So in that area, there is a, why do we put them together, invest together? It's because it's a long-term investment. It is a risky business. All businesses are risky. But if you invest together, you reduce the risk. Two, you can easily access finance. You can get support of government. You can, you can even access the market. You can sell. Whereby a small farmer will not get the market himself. You need somebody else to get the market. But this person who has been the rice, importing rice, selling rice, he knows where the market is. We are now getting rice from Pakistan, India, and everywhere. We know where they are exporting to. If we produce enough rice, we can export in the same areas where they are exporting. We are looking at the area of seeds. Collective investment in seeds. We know we import almost most of the seeds, maize, and so on. So when we are putting together people to invest in growing seeds in Rwanda, said that with the government target of 2021 to be self-sustaining in seeds, we want to achieve there. There is profit. It's not only supporting government, it's not supporting farmers, but it's also a business. So that's how people can manage to be independent in seeds. We are doing the same thing like in maize processing, maize flour. We have been importing a lot of maize flour from different countries, neighboring countries. Yet, here we have excessive maize. So what was lacking is people to invest in processing of maize. So we are doing it collectively to manage to bring good machines which can process in terms of grading, in terms of quantity, in terms of economies of scale, and the reduced cost. So maybe there are many, but I just said the two.
Just following on that, what has been hard not to crack in that process? It sounds good. What has been quite challenging?
What has been challenging is that people have not been discussing businesses and how to work together. And people have been working on an individual basis, and they are not breaking even. So, and that's why whatever I mentioned was lacking. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Daniel, I'm now coming for inclusion and women empowerment. We heard about the pillars, and when I was looking at what you do in your program, it says you aim to sustainably increase smallholder farmers' income, improve the nutritional status of women and children, increase resilience of Rwanda agriculture and food systems to a changing planet. Very good. And my question is, how do you invest in women as key decision makers in household food system in the 10 districts, which are all rural districts?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question, Liberal. I think what I can say is we invest a lot in women, for sure, because there are thousands and thousands of pages of research that show that when you build a woman's capacity to manage income, to manage the farm's production capacity, to apply fertilizer and seeds properly, then you see very large increases in the nutritional outcomes in that family. A lot of people can make jokes about men who just spend the family income on beer, or jokes about how maybe women can't manage. But the truth is, the research shows that these investments in women earn many times more than the ROI is very high, much more so than the corresponding investments in men. So the challenge we see in these districts, and I'm sure across Rwanda, and my colleagues refer to this, I mean, there are challenges, constraints, which are resulting in urban migration, rural depopulation. So I go back to my point about knowledge and information. Knowledge and information about how to grow properly, how to manage family income properly, how to feed your children properly. Government is there, different development partners are there, but this is key constraints. You can't have contract farming if farmer doesn't know how to farm. You cannot prevent overuse or inappropriate use of fertilizer if the farmer doesn't know how to apply proper fertilizer. Even today around Musanze, when you have farmers using completely inappropriate types of fertilizer that decrease rather than increase potato production. My colleagues from CIP, Honorable Plus are here. So access to information and knowledge is key. Women tend to absorb and retain this more, and they apply the corresponding benefits for the benefit of their families, rather than entertain internal uses. So Higawes itself, we work through about 4,000 community health workers. Government's our partner here to deliver behavior change, incentives, knowledge to women care groups, even male care groups, which is pretty new for Rwanda or even East Africa, but to capacitate not only women but also men to get together and exchange information and knowledge, so the outcomes we all want to see, which of course reduction of malnutrition and stunting, more household income, so these are achieved. So USAID does a lot all over Africa. We didn't invent at Higawes any of these approaches, but what makes Rwanda different is really strong partnership with government. Government is there to work with us, monitor impact, come in as needed. So that's, for myself personally, certainly refreshing. So Liberal, I don't know if I answered that question, but I did. All right, I did my best.
Thank you. Minister, do you want to say something on gender, or should I ask you about youth? Which one do you prefer?
Minister is not a woman, so she can
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what Dan said is true, because when you look at the landscape of who is food insecure and who is heading malnourished families, there are households that are headed by women. So I guess that is even the reason the whole reason of this report, because these are the people to be reached. Because if we want to eradicate poverty, if we want to achieve zero hunger, if we want to achieve the SDGs, we really need to go deep there and make sure that no one is left behind. And I think that is key if we are to achieve sustainable development goals, even our national goals. So all initiatives that are targeting those specific groups are making sure that they are inclusive enough, because you don't want to kind of feminize the agriculture per se, but still one day how women are having power to make a decision on what their family income is used for. We find good development, good food, good nutrition outcomes there. So gender is a key into what we are doing here. But also on youth, I think it was mentioned so many things, but losing all of youth to Kigali or the bigger cities, I think that would be very, very dangerous. That means your rural area will never develop. So,
just like Dr. Feng's village.
Yeah, so actually, when we are discussing agriculture, we tend to assume that everything is understood, but probably the better term we should be discussing about the agri-food systems, because all of these interventions that are coming suggesting the private sector what to do, they are just parts of the value chains of the food system. So even the private sector, if it goes into the rural area and find that everyone is uneducated, there is no health person who can do the job that they want to do, they are going to run away from the rural area. So I think making a rural space a place where everyone is happy to be, including young people, I think that is the most sustainable way of developing your country.
Any reaction in the audience? Yes, I'm glad you've put your hand up, because I think there was a report by FAO that suggested that if we could bridge the gap between genders, we could get some 20% growth. Is that true?
Well, thank you. Well, Galvez from FAO representative to Rwanda. Let me first start by thanking our panelists for the discussion and thanking you for moderating this. I just want to add a few words to what was said on women by the minister. We do know that poverty is rural and it affects women more than men. Now, in a context where women can play a significant role when it comes to value addition, processing. So if you want to take people out of poverty, you need a community, what I call a community anchorage. And this goes with women involvement in processing, development of value addition and driving value chain at community level. They are best and better at that as compared to men. Now what do they need? Basically women, like other entrepreneurs I would say, but let me emphasize on women, they need basically three things. Access to credit, and here again, you know, there is a discrimination, a negative one towards women. Access to credit, knowledge, and when I say knowledge, I mean they need to improve their capacity to manage better their business.
Is that specific to women?
Well, I'm emphasizing women because they play a significant role in value addition in terms of food processing. And I do believe that if you want to take people out of poverty, you need to create value addition at community levels. Value addition encouraged at community level. And women are better than men into food processing, you know, based on experiences that we have all over the world. So women, if we pay attention to women, well, we improve the situation, creation of wealth at community level because they can add value. And they are discriminated, as I said, you know, access to credit, access to knowledge, and they need support as well to improve the standards. You know, that's how you can sell outside what you're producing at the community level. But this other point is very important. We do know that when women earn money, when their income improves, the whole family will benefit from it. as compared to what happens when men are involved. I'm not saying that men do not take care of their families necessarily, but women definitely will improve the condition, the livelihood of the family when their income improves. One more reason to emphasize women and how to, insert them in the whole economic system at community level and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, there's another hand behind. Let's move here, because you haven't heard anyone on this row. There's somebody in the corner there, then one, then we go to you, yeah? Trying to make the whole group participate.
Okay.
Your name, where you come from?
My name is Gerardine. I'm the country director of Program. I just wanted to come back to the point that you mentioned on competition. Is there competition between the urban and the rural? And what does that mean in the context of what's happening across the world? What I think we see is we're seeing more and more private sector taking over large tracts of land, and that this is disproportionately this is affecting the rural farmers who are left with very limited land to talk about. And we see this in Latin America, we see this in other countries in Africa. So I think, yes, when we talk about competition and what that means then for women, that will impact more women, because women are usually very much at the center of the household. And when they are displaced and they have to start all over again their lives in other places where they are resettled, then this does impact what that means for agricultural productivity in the future. So I do think the report talks to rural governance and what it means for having an enabling legal framework to protect the property rights of farmers vis-a-vis private sector investment. I think that is a key point that needs to be emphasized, because we are seeing that there are trends which do impact on this whole positive thrust of this report around rural revitalization. If that aspect around really protecting the property rights of the farmers is not really taken into consideration.
Thank you. Someone in the middle here, and then we come back to the panel.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. My name is Eme Kayumba. I'm coming from Rural Development Initiative, here in brief. So together with Imbaraga Farmer Organization, we are trying to work with rural youth, especially in cooperatives, to see how we can help them to be professional farmers. My comment is on collective investment.
I would like us to comment on youth as well.
Yes,
if you don't mind.
Collective investment on the youth, of course. We would like to invite especially the private sector and other successful people in their career to really come and invest collectively with the young people in rural areas. Most of those people, successful people, they don't have time, they have money, and sometimes they have land. But the young people, so they have energy and they have time and they have a lot to show. So I'll invite the private sector to really come and see the way they can invest together with the young people. Then together, collectively, they can benefit, they can have the young people, and together with those big successful business persons in other fields, they can have successful enterprise with those young people, and also together we can really help the country to even end the challenge of unemployment among the young people. Thank you very much.
Yeah, just let me push back on that. What are they? These business people are busy, as you just said. So where do they go to find those young people who are ready? Is there a mechanism? Is there a forum?
Yes, there is a mechanism. Yeah. Especially in rural areas, even if you want those young people, you can even come to us, we can help you to find some of those young people. And also I'm sure that even the government system has in place, that our government has in place the system how you can access the young people. But the young people in agriculture field, if you want, as I said, together with Imbaraga Farmers Organization, we have many young people working ways to see how we can support them to be professional farmers. So there is a way, there is a data where you can access those young people if you want to work with them. Thank you.
How about you reaching out to them?
Okay, we are trying to do that. But if we get this opportunity where we can see them or here in this meeting, it's also an opportunity to invite them.
Grab him when we finish.
Yes.
Get a card.
Thank you very much.
Robert, they are inviting you. The youth are ready. And they have skills, they are energetic, they know where things are. You guys are very busy with so many things. That's a very inciting invitation. What do you have to say?
Thank you. We are busy, but we have a system. We have leadership in the private sector. We are inclusive of all youth, women, and others. We have the Chamber of Youth. We have the Chamber of Women. The purpose for these chambers is to put together youth and women, and they share views in businesses, they share businesses, and when we talk about the chambers, they form up the private sector leadership. So we are together. Maybe some of youth are not members of these chambers, whereby they can get information, they can know all these initiatives, collective investments. We are doing it even at a very large level, at high level, with big numbers, whereby even if you don't have the business, you can invest with others. The little money you have, you can invest with others. And it is easy for you to get the business and even to information, to discuss with your colleagues in that kind of company. I'll give you an example where I put together youth and women and the other people, about 200 people. They meet, they do business together, they are facilitated in their company, and they are doing well. So I encourage youth. Most of our youth are educated at the level of university to be innovative, to have ideas, bring it to the leadership of PSF. We shall help you to grow the ideas. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to press on that, I think, if I heard right, those who join the chambers are entrepreneurs. Is that true? Or it's just any youth can come and join?
When we say the chamber of youth.
Of youth, of course.
Yes.
Now, I think the question was raising is probably not entrepreneurs. Is these young maybe who are, who have some basic skills and energy, but not enough money to venture into those businesses? Is there any way of also catering for them? Because I think they are the majority. Those without capital. Yes, Minister.
Dan said something that is crucial. He said the communication. So what I can tell is that I've been seeing some young people being connected to people with land, to people with cattle and everything. And there is a time I saw some young guy from Rwanda. He wrote on Twitter that they need a market for cabbage. And then he tagged the PSF. And then PSF CEO said, okay, you call, you meet this person and then we'll help you. So there is something that young people are not using enough that can be of a link with these people with money. And for us in agricultural sector, we see it as an exciting moment. I see, was 10 people when I was coming here. I saw some of them people tweeting with a danger sign saying that being rust can destroy your whole field. So farmers, please visit your farms regularly. I think the young people, they have a huge potential, and their connection, their ICT, their rural space, these are key. So if they tweet and say, they tag PSF or they call, they say, we have a group of 100 people, we need to work for rich people in PSF, I think PSF will respond. So I did a trial. I spoke to Bank of Kigali, and I told them, guys, let's make a pilot of 100 college graduate kids to be dealers in the inputs. And I was like, so how do we get their startup capital to them? And then DK was finding a solution in a second. So you get 100 kids mainstreamed into the PSF system very easily. So I think the communication is a very valuable tool.
Thank you. I think that was one of the building blocks, connectivity. And I wanted to come back to you, Robert, about rural and urban market links. How, from your experience, how can we take it to the next level? How can we strengthen that connectivity?
I think what we can do as the private sector, we advocate for infrastructure. The biggest problem in business, the biggest problem in shifting one item to another item is logistics infrastructure. So what we can do as the private sector is to advocate for infrastructure. Then we advocate for investment in logistics to easily transport produces, raw materials and other things from the rural area to urban area. In the same way,
the government coming in or other
for infrastructure is government.
Yes.
For logistics is private sector. In the same way, that is how also the finished product can reach the rural area. Without that, there is a lot of problems over the cost and everything. Whatever you do, there is a problem. That is one way. Number two, maybe I would add just a little past experience. We mentioned of rural-urban migration. There's people moving to town looking for jobs and so on and so forth. What we used to happen before is that when I was still young, it wasn't there. People are not moving to town. I don't know why that time, but that time there was transport, passenger transport from rural to town very easily.
And they would not go.
They wouldn't go. There was a lot of food, and the young people would participate in agriculture together with their parents. So in the recent years, in the 90s, people started moving, I'm saying in this region, started moving to towns. What happened is that youth reduced in the villages. So now, this is continuing. It has not stopped. What I would suggest for government, for people, for like a unique country like Rwanda, I would say instead we would campaign for people who are living in urban areas to support with finances their parents left in the village. Instead of migrating also the parents to the town. In that way, I think it could enhance the agricultural activities and production in rural areas and to be kept productive and good. And if you are supporting your village, you also have a motive to go there, stay there at night and so on and so forth. So I think if we could do modern agriculture where we do a lot of a large scale of farming, including using tractors and so on. Or we do campaigns to people who are in town, who have jobs, who have money, to support their people back in the village. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I was checking on my time. I want to see whether I've exceeded the minute you gave me because I started very late. Should I carry on or should I think of winding down? Actually, I need your blessings. We're supposed to finish at 1:15, but we started very, very late. Should we carry on with one more question? Are you happy with that? No objection, so we proceed. Yeah, let's go to the parting shot as we close. I'm looking for practical suggestions. I think in Rwanda, as we heard in the previous presentations, there's been some progress in bringing life in rural communities. But as we heard, challenges are abounding, and the rural communities will be the first to hit, and they will hit the hardest than those in urban areas. what practical suggestions would you offer on building on what has been achieved to make a shift and go to the next level with regard to rural revitalization in Rwanda? If you had all the powers, if that was a ministry or a department or something which is tasked with that, what one or two things, practical things, would you do as we close? I'll start with the minister.
I think I have mentioned it, governance is a big thing that is needed to be able to connect the dots of what is needed for rural transformation or rural development. I think the chairman, PSF, mentioned this trend of not migrating and now migrating. I think we are, life is getting exciting and innovation is bringing in new things. So I guess by that time there was no TV even in Kigali or Kampala. There was no internet even in Kampala or Kigali or Nairobi. So why would you go there if there is no much difference from where you are coming from and where you are going to? So I think, again, repeating myself, it's important to make the rural space enjoyable to live in. That means you provide adequate education for the people to be innovative and find solutions within the community. I think you provide quality healthcare. I think the communication is decent. The rural infrastructures, as Robert have mentioned, are there. So if the quality of life is equal both in the cities or towns and rural community, I don't think that will be worrying about migration or inequalities or anything. So I think, development is very complex, but making the rural space a place where everyone, even if Robert goes to stay night at his parents', he feels like there is no difference from his home and his parents' home. I think that is a dream of everyone. Thank you.
Actually, apart from clean air, fresh air, which is there more than in the city. Thank you very much, Minister. Robert, what's your parting shots with regard to how to move this to the next level?
I think Honorable Minister have summed it up. Governance is very, very important. But also the contribution of private sector for market, the outcries about we do a lot of funding and so on, and there is a handicap of the market. So I would urge the private sector to invest a lot in looking for markets for the produces from the villages, both locally and internationally. And that would sort out problems of surplus production.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Really, I can only compliment the comments of my colleagues here on the panel, but I would like to reinforce the aspect of service delivery to the rural areas. The Minister mentioned healthcare. We talk about things like education. We talk about knowledge. The critical factor, in my personal view, is really that rural populations have access to services such as education and have access to knowledge and information. And I focus on this issue of information and knowledge. Farmers need to know how to farm. Agri-dealers need to know how to deliver inputs and other services to farmers. So knowledge and awareness is key. And I make this, I guess, joke. We say that to a carpenter, it seems that all problems can be solved with a hammer and a nail. But what I can say about rural revitalization or the challenge in rural areas is that It may be that increased knowledge, as education, will not solve all problems, but for sure problems can't be solved without them. And so if we talk about farmers knowing how to farm, healthcare professionals knowing how to deliver healthcare, these type of services, access to information need to be strengthened, and that's where the investments, in my opinion, from government are going, for sure. But that pace needs to increase, needs to accelerate, so the impact is felt before the young people on the farms in the rural areas become old, like me and my colleague Robert. So thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, I think we come to the end of our panel. Thank you very much, terrific panelists. Would you join me in clapping for them? And now we come to the close. How do we close? Julius. Should I hand over to you? Yeah, I thought you'd be the one taking over and leading to the closing phase.
If I can just, Dr. Fan, would you want to say a few words of closing? And I will say something logistic after that. And can I, before you start, one little thing? Can we also give our moderator a big hand? Thank you, David.
Well, firstly, let me express my great appreciation to His Right Honourable Prime Minister coming here to launch our Global Food Policy Report. Once again, we have seen a strong commitment from the government to look at the rural revitalization. I also wanted to express my great gratitude to the Minister of Agriculture, Gerardine, in co-organizing this event. So I learned quite a bit from here, just to reflect what we have discussed. One is, we must make sure that rural area is an enjoyable place where you can live. I think the final panel, the Minister, Daniel, many others mentioned. Good services, good environment. But here, I also wanted to emphasize, particularly here in Africa, agriculture, food, are still a fundamental in rural areas. So here, increasing agricultural productivity by using technologies, good inputs, access to market, to me, is still a fundamental. So let's not forget about it. Now, in terms of the youth, I think mechanization is a very big part of it. In addition to biotechnology, biotechnological innovation, mechanization, how we're going to promote mechanization in such a land-scarce country in Rwanda. This is very much a research topic. So I just came from Asia, India, Bhutan, and many other places. In a very small plot, they can introduce very simple technology that can really avoid youth dragging. So they truly can enjoy their farming. They're not necessarily just to work 12 hours or 14 hours a day. Ban yourself. That's not acceptable. Now, I think the processing part, the food system, I think the Minister mentioned about the agri-food system. That system covers a big part of the post-harvest stage. Processing, transportation, retailing, wholesaling, even restaurants. That part is very critical to generate employment, to generate highly paid jobs for youth to engage. Now, the non-farm is important. Rwanda is a very land-scarce country. So I think probably it's one of the most land-scarce countries. Agriculture is important. Using agriculture is very critical. But we also must think beyond agriculture, non-farm employment, including processing. But in the meantime, the crafts production, even some of the sort of industrial zones. To me, the biggest resources in this country is human resources. It's the people. So that's what I would call it population dividend, the youth dividend. You have such a big proportion of youth under 25 or 2030. If you use it right, it's a dividend. If you don't use it right, it's a burden. So youth employment is clearly very critical here. So I just had a very brief dialogue with the Prime Minister. He requested us whether we can organize a workshop or maybe some study to look at youth employment in rural areas, in agriculture, in food sector. So this is something we need to discuss with our partners, with our ministry, and internally with IFPRI. Now finally, I heard from the panel discussion women. Yes, women is very critical. At IFPRI, we worked with Oxford University and the USID in developing an index for women's empowerment in agriculture index. That measures how women is empowered in terms of their decision making, in allocating income, in terms of their access to assets, in terms of their access to political network or community and beyond. So I think we must continue to work on that. Maybe Rwanda can provide a good example for many other countries to follow. I also heard that from the top, the percentage of women in your parliament, right? In your different ministries, very high, probably one of the highest in Africa, probably in the world. And then down to the community, how do we make sure that women are truly empowered politically is very, very important. So I just want to thank you for your participation, for your great support, great enthusiasm in looking at the rural areas using a new lens. It's very timely. 20 years ago, we worked on rural development, but today it is different. Revitalization has new meanings because new technology, new thinking, and new understanding, a new government structure, and a new political will. Again, here when I travel across African countries, I see great leadership, great political will, great commitment from national leaders here in Rwanda. This is probably the most important among all the African countries. So let me again, thank you very much.
We now have a very exciting part of the program, and I would like to announce that what we will do next is have a panel discussion that will be moderated by Mr. Liberal Gerardine. The panel will include the Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Animal Resources, Dr. Gerardine Mukeshimana, the Chairman of the Private Sector Federation, Dr. Robert Bafakudera, and the Chief of Party Henga Wies, Mr. Daniel Gies. Could I invite those that I have mentioned? So
my Kenya one is not so good, but I'm sure.
Oh, okay, sorry, I'm being a bit too quick. Let's wait a little bit till the minister.
To my colleague, tell us with appropriate translation. What is driving people how to propose I arrived here a year and a half ago.
I have a very attractive alternative.
And after 5 years?
And that is that my colleagues here suggested that we have a very quick coffee break, get the coffee and bring it back in the room. So I think that is a nice way of spending the next 5 minutes. Could I invite you to get a coffee and come back with the coffee into the room, please? Thank you so much.
opportunities, I guess you take over. Welcome.
Your Right Honourable Prime Minister, Honourable Ministers, Excellencies, colleagues, my name is Teunis van Renen. I'm the Head of Partnerships and Business Development at the International Food Policy Research Institute, and I'm delighted that you have joined us today to discuss rural revitalization, global and Rwanda perspectives, where we will be launching the Global Food Policy Report of 2019. I have the pleasure now to invite the Honourable Minister of Agriculture, Dr. Gerardine Mukeshimana, to address you and to welcome you. Thank you.
Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Ministers, Dr. Van Schengen, Director General of IFPRI, Excellencies, Ambassadors, and representatives of diplomatic corps, representative of our private sector, development partners, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I think my job today is much easier. I really want to convey a very warm welcome to everyone who is present here to this launch of the Global Food Report Policy for the 2019. I also want to thank Dr. Van Schengen and the IFPRI team to have chosen Rwanda to be one of the few places where this year's Global Food Policy Report is being launched. I want to thank all of you for being here. We are talking about a very important item. We are talking about the food at the center of achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. The report is highlighting just the two SDGs, SDG 1 of ending poverty and SDG 2 of zero hunger. But when you look at it, it goes beyond that, because it is telling us what it takes to change the rural space where majority of the poor people live, but also where the custodians of sustainability lies. So it's an important report. We are launching it today. The report is telling us how fundamental the rural transformation, how important our food and agriculture system, and most importantly, how the rural area is urgently needed to be transformed so that we can guarantee that all other SDGs can be achieved. This report has been qualified by IFPRI to be the linchpin of the achievement of SDGs, and I believe that is a very true qualification. And the report that we are launching today, once again, is a sign that Rwanda is committed to be a place of inclusive development where no one is left behind. For strategic plan for agriculture transformation has made it very clear that the rural people have to be given opportunities to increase income through the use of better factors of productivity, but also that they deserve the required support to be linked to supportive markets. So without taking so much, I thank you, Right Honorable Prime Minister, for accepting to grace this event. I thank IFPRI for being here and accepting to launch this report here. And I thank everyone who is here present for your active participation. Thank you.
Honourable Minister, thank you so much for your words of welcome. And I have the pleasure now to invite my Director General, Dr. Gerardine, to deliver a keynote address on rural revitalization. Dr. Van, the floor is yours.
Very honorable, right honorable Prime Minister, Minister of Agriculture, and other ministers, and ladies and gentlemen, good morning. So it's really my great pleasure to launch the Global Food Policy Report 2019 here. Let me first congratulate Rwanda for making such great achievements in reducing hunger, malnutrition, in promoting agricultural growth, rural development, and beyond. So for the last several years, IFPRI has been working with the Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Health, and obviously the Prime Minister's office in expanding our collaboration over here. I also wanted to thank His Right Honorable Prime Minister to serve as the Leadership Council member of an initiative called Compact 2025. I think the banner is here. So the Compact 2025 was launched several years ago in supporting a global effort, SDG 2, Sustainable Development Goal number 2, to end hunger, and to support the efforts by WHO, FAO, for the effort to improve nutrition in a decade nutrition movement, and the Sun Initiative, scaling up nutrition movement and beyond. So we have some of the key global national leaders serving in the committee, the leaders from Ethiopia, the leaders from Bangladesh, the leaders from Rwanda, the leaders from Malawi, and some of the global figures, including some of the heads of the United Nations agencies. Last November, we organized a global conference in Bangkok towards the end of last November. So His Right Honorable Prime Minister came and gave a very powerful speech how Rwanda is coming to end hunger and malnutrition, and to use a food systems approach to deliver health, nutrition, sustainable development. So we are very much inspired by you. And for the last 2 or 3 months, our IFPRI colleagues here, Tönnies Vermina, David Spellman, and Xinzhen Biao, Paul DeRush, Osman Balian, here try to further strengthen our collaboration here by setting up a Zero Hunger Center. So the center try to promote innovations, strategies, and even technologies. So innovation always is key to eliminate hunger and malnutrition using food and agriculture, together with other interventions like sanitation, healthcare, and beyond. So we are really looking forward to work much more closely with Rwanda partners. So it's your program, it's your vision. So we'll be here just to support you, capacity strengthening, the joint research, networking, seminars, workshops like this. So we hope, I joked with the Prime Minister, I'm leaving IFPRI towards the end of this year. The biggest farewell gift to me is to set up a center here in this country. And I'm very committed to make sure that this will happen. So I will thank you very much. It seems to me it's not just a strong support from IFPRI and the government here. seems to me everybody from the room, the development partner, we are looking forward to work with you, to set up this innovation center. So let me come back to the 2019 Global Food Policy Report. IFPRI has been producing Global Food Policy Report for the last 80 years. The second year I took over IFPRI's DG's position. So every year we try to synthesize the major events, major issues, or major developments in the areas of food and agriculture. So for bigger people like you, you don't need to read all the documents, 1,000 pages, by country, by different UN and so on. So that document will help you to understand what has happened and what will happen in the next year. So in the areas of food policy, nutrition policy, and rural development. And every year we also select a theme. For 2019, we select the theme of rural revitalization. Why is that? There's an urgency. Rural area has been ignored after so many years. You might remember the last major report on agriculture, the World Bank World Development Report, is 2008. So for the 10 years, we didn't talk much about agriculture, of course, not rural development. Only some limited effort maybe by IFPRI to look at rural areas as a space for development. So we are facing, today we have an urgency to look at the rural development for two reasons. Number one is we are facing a rural crisis. Globally, I'm not talking about Rwanda. Rwanda is doing great globally. Why we are facing a crisis? Environment, youth employment, undernutrition, poverty, that's still rural phenomena. Second, the SDG sustainable goals. Without addressing the rural crisis, we will not be able to achieve sustainable development goals. Now, just to give you some figures. Right now, 70–80% of extreme poor are in rural areas, and the majority of them are hungry, undernourished. So their living conditions are not acceptable. So this is not just true in developing countries. It is even true in some of the emerging economies or even developing countries. Another crisis is the environment. And this is largely to do with agricultural production. In many parts of the world, particularly in Asia, India, China, Vietnam, the overuse of agricultural inputs, fertilizers, pesticides. Just give you one figure. On a per hectare basis, China is using 400 kilograms of fertilizers. Here in Africa, probably 30, maybe even less than that. So basically more than 10 times higher than that. And a depletion of underground water. So when you travel in many parts of the rural areas, the environment has been degraded, destroyed. Water is polluted, land is degraded. In many parts of India, I was in India just about a week ago. The air pollution came from agriculture. There's the burning of the straws, rice straws, wheat straws, and the PM 2.5. These small particles, very hot. They affect our health. They reduce our life expectancy. They reduce our children's cognitive skills. Now, youth employment. It's very safe to say that in many parts of rural areas, 20%, 30%, in some cases, even 50% of the rural youth are either unemployment or underemployment. So unemployment means you may work occasionally, but you don't have a full-time job. You do not earn a decent income to make sure that your children can go to school, your health can be taken care of. So that's why we call it rural revitalization, revitalize the rural areas. We had a good time, and our attention was on rural development. back in the maybe 20 years ago, 15 years ago. The World Bank community-driven program is very much on rural areas, agriculture. China, Vietnam started reforming rural areas. So today, we must revitalize that effort, revitalize investment, revitalize the policy. So we have some good cases. South Korea is a typical one. Because of rapid economic growth, urbanization in the 80s, there was a very large rural-urban gap. So the urban residents earned 3 times, 4 times, even 5 times higher income than rural residents. And the rural infrastructure deteriorated. But the government began to launch a program for a new village movement. I think that we have some Korean colleagues here, Korea. The new village movement. Government began to invest in rural infrastructure, agricultural research, R&D, using the food system, and social protection, direct income support, help the elderly farmers. And as a result of that effort, today you don't see a big difference between rural and urban at all. So South Korea. Let's also talk about the rich countries, European Union. Until 15 years ago, the European Union spent €40 billion in subsidizing its agriculture. Land was very much affected, water was polluted, and it caused such a big trade distortion. Americans, emerging economies, always accusing Europeans subsidizing the cows. So the dollar spent per cow can easily help to raise 3 or 4 children in this continent. But for the last 10 years, the European Union began to reform its policy. So they transformed the $40 billion subsidies. They used that to improve rural environment by providing environmental services. The farmers are paid. And direct income support. So certain farmers receive direct income support from the European Union or their governments. And help youth to be trained to move towards or to other professions. So not just agriculture, non-farm, tourism, the whole value chains and so on. So my own country, in fact, until 2 years ago, China faced rural crisis. One is demographic crisis. Youth left the rural areas, like in my village, you don't see any young people. Everybody you see there is almost 60, 70. Even the children have moved to the cities. So that's one crisis. Another crisis is the environmental crisis. This actually is a consequence of the development, modern development. When our farmers have access to clean drinking water, modern plumbing system, access to electricity, natural gas, everything's great in a beautiful villa, but the environment has been garbage is, again, from modernization, all these modern packaging materials, plastics, plastic bottles, everywhere. And the rivers were so dirty. Nobody cares about the river anymore. They don't drink the water from the river. So the environment was a crisis. Just about a year ago, in January 2018, the Chinese government launched the first so-called first official document. Every year Chinese government releases maybe 5 or 6 documents. The first one is always on agriculture, on rural areas. That shows the priority of the country. So 2018, the first official document is on rural revitalization. And there will be several elements, which is very similar to our 2019 global food policy report. So economic revitalization, environmental revitalization, service, education, health, entertainment, service revitalization, and governance revitalization. So these are some of the blocks, building blocks or chapters of 2018 global food policy report. Number 1 is to create jobs for young people by improving connectivity, rural roads, access to electricity, and more importantly, access to internet, broadband. Without that, youth will not stay in rural areas. The second one is gender. Women account for probably more than 50%, or 60% agricultural production, and the population in rural areas. If we do not empower women, how can we revive rural areas? Environment, as I already mentioned, must be the essential part of the revitalization. Renewable energy, this is so critical in this part of the world. 30%, only 30% of the population have access to electricity. And the governments, how do we empower the rural citizens to make sure that they have decision-making power, they can set their priorities, to make sure that their community leaders are accountable to what they say. So let me just give a couple of words on each building block. So connectivity. It's very interesting to see a chart from Ethiopia, the road connectivity. Yes, because of urbanization, because of improved rural roads. You will see that actually 50% of Ethiopian population lives in this called urban peri-urban areas. So yes, you may not live in Addis Ababa, but you are close enough, within 2 hours of traffic, or by bus or by car. 50% of the population. Ethiopia actually is one of the countries where the majority of the population is still in rural areas. So it's changing, it's transforming. The connectivity has already improved, but we must further improve that connectivity. I was in Ethiopia just yesterday. I heard that in many sort of remote, highland, dry areas, they still have to walk for many hours to reach the market. Now obviously, internet access today is a must. And without that internet access, the farmers, rural residents will not be able to use that as a way, as a means to improve their economic activities, their livelihoods, or the quality of their life. I heard that Alibaba is already here to train some of the business people here to use e-commerce. It's great, but we must improve the connectivity to make sure that everybody here in the country has access to wireless, to cell phones, and also the content. Who's going to provide the content of the internet? Now the women's empowerment. I think we developed a very simple framework to empower the rural women to revitalize rural women. Number one is reach. Make sure that women participate in programs, investments. And number two is the benefit. Participation is important, but without benefiting from the program, participation actually is a waste of the time. Disempowerment. So finding to empower. So once the women participate in programs, projects, investment, or strategies, and once they benefit from that, then they must be empowered. So they must access to assets, services, political voices, political network. And I'm very happy that more than 60 countries in the world have already adapted some of the framework like that. And the African Union, or the AU Women Initiative, they also use this framework to make sure that women are empowered. Now the environment. Yes, environment is destroyed. Environment is degraded. But it's not to make, particularly in this part of the world, do not repeat the mistake that Chinese, Indians, Vietnamese have made. Make sure that your land is protected, your water continues to be clean, your air continues to be fresh, like we are living very fresh air here. And one big key element is how can we create incentive for rural residents to take care of the environment? That's an action. And also how can we make sure that the farmers or rural residents truly understand the long-term negative consequences of degraded environment. I think the Green Revolution in Asia and in China to some extent really improved our productivity, food and nutrition security. But because of overuse of pesticides in my village, many people experienced cancers or other sort of diseases in the later stage of their lives. So that message has to be communicated or even understood by many rural residents to protect their environment. Like electricity. We know that without access to electricity, the whole value chain, even our health, children's health, our schools, will not be able to function. Many Asian countries experience is to build the centralized grids through the coal power plants. Here in Africa, I don't think we should repeat what the Asians have done. You have very rich solar energy, wind energy, and also hydroelectric power. And you don't need it to be linked to a centralized grid. Even small, localized grid can work. Small, decentralized, localized grid can serve the purpose efficiently, effective, without huge investment. And at IFPRI, and some of our researchers have done some work in South Africa, West Africa. How can we promote the solar energy to make sure that the farmers, the rural residents have access to available, but become reliable energy. Oops. Okay. Finally, government and institutions. Even a country like China, they actually look at the governance. How do they make sure the rural residents are empowered to make sure that their local community leaders are accountable for what they do? I'll just give you one example. My brother actually is a community leader back in China. So a couple of years ago, the other government recognized that the environment was a big issue in our village. So what the government did is, okay, the Ministry of Environment said, okay, so we recognize the problem you have. So we'll give you maybe $5 million in a community to build an animal waste treatment facility. 2 years back, beautiful facility. When I go to visit my village, I always go and see. But it's not functioning. It's a beautiful facility because there's no demand. So central government thought, oh, you need some money, okay, we'll put some facility over here. And the farmers in my village don't produce chickens, pigs anymore. The pigs, chickens are produced by very large, sort of centralized production facilities. They have their own facility to treat the animal waste. But in the meantime, the villagers in my hometown want to get money to clean the river, to drain the water out, to take all the dirt out, to clean the water, to clean the river, and to set up the garbage connections. So big money is wasted because they don't listen to the community people. So how can we make sure that the community people have the voice, have the power in setting the priorities, investment priorities, in developing certain initiatives that truly fit their need instead of, okay, Ministry of Agriculture, they come vertically, health, they also come vertically, environment comes vertically. So there is no integration of the village now. But something also happened very positive. Again, that is something to do with internet connection. So in my village, everybody has a social media called WeChat. That really put all the politicians in hotspot. If they see a dirty river or garbage are not connected, and just take a photo. I'll put it in the WeChat and share the whole community. Then the community leader must fix it. Just like in your case, you sign the contract, right? Fix it in a couple of days. If they don't do it, they will lose their job. So that's sort of, yes, decentralization, empower the rural community, but also clear accountability with clear performance metrics. So that's the essential part of the rural revitalization. Now here on Africa, I don't want to spend too much on this. So Africa, I don't know whether we should call it revitalization or whether we just call it a really great push. Because I just think many other parts of the world, they had a good time. At least the focus on rural development. So now we want to revitalize. For Africa, I think the rural development, whether you call it revitalization or big push, is essential, as important as many other parts of the world. The majority of poor hungry people are still in rural areas. People of agriculture, youth does not like to engage in agriculture. And I think the environment needs to be protected before it becomes degrading and a climate change is another big issue. So I'm very confident to see lots of positive changes here, country by country. National leaders are very much committed here in Rwanda, Ethiopia, Senegal, many countries. And the capacity is being built. And the development partners, like many of you say here, are willing to support. So let's all work together to revitalize rural areas, particularly here in Africa. And in the next 5 years, 10 years, I'm very confident if the rural areas is revitalized, then the SDG goals is really no reach. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fan, for this presentation. I would like to call on the Honourable Minister of Agriculture to introduce the next part of the program.
Thank you, Dr. Fan, for giving us a snapshot of the content of the report. And at this time, it is my distinguished honor to invite you, Right Honorable Prime Minister, to come over and give your remarks.
Honourable Ministers, Dr. Schengen Fan, the Director General of International Food Policy Research Institute, IFPRI, members of Diplomatic Corps, the Roman partners, distinguished guests, a very good morning. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome to Rwanda all participants to this gathering. Particularly, I want to thank the leadership of IFPRI, led by Dr. Schengen, for their consistent engagement in strengthening the partnership between IFPRI and the Rwandan government. Under your leadership, Dr. Schengen, IFPRI and Rwanda have worked together to enhance capacity for evidence-based policy. This is already playing a key input role in the fight against malnutrition and accelerating agricultural transformation. Today, IFPRI is launching here in Rwanda the Global Food Policy Report 2019, whose main focus is rural revitalization. I wish, therefore, to thank the International Food Policy Research Institute for deciding to launch this report here in Kigali. The findings of this report clearly show that Rwanda is on the right path to Africa's journey to revitalize its rural areas. Indeed, Rwanda highly appreciates this report. It details with evidence-based facts the urgency of rural revitalization in order to address the crisis of food insecurity in the rural area. We strongly believe that this report will contribute to the emergence of global food policy shift toward high investment and capitalization for competitiveness of agriculture sector. This will lead to more agricultural output and rural transformation. Distinguished guests, in Rwanda, we have made some concrete progress in rural development. It is at the center of our national development vision, strategies, and programs. As example, the strategic plan for agricultural transformation, PSTA4, which was launched in January 2018, aims at significantly increasing productivity of different inputs invested in agriculture sector and promoting market linkages and value addition to agricultural produce. PSTA4 is therefore a comprehensive government strategy to achieve food security. It has clear action to increase labor and land productivity, linking farmers to lucrative markets and promoting sustainable production system. Full implementation of PSTA4 strategy will have a tangible impact on rural transformation. It will also create jobs for a good proportion of our citizens who are generally youth. To improve the participation of youth in agriculture, the government of Rwanda provided through trainings, skills in agribusiness and entrepreneurship. In addition, the government has created an enabling environment for the private sector to invest in agriculture value chain where Rwanda has a comparative advantage. Furthermore, the government has increased its efforts to put in place physical agricultural market infrastructure to allow farmers generate more money from their produce. With these initiatives, we are very confident that we will be able to advance our agricultural transformation. In so doing, we are projecting to meet by 2030 the SDGs targets of ending poverty in all its forms everywhere and hunger, achieving food security, and improve the nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture. Distinguished guests, the 2019 Global Food Policy Report captures some of Rwanda's homegrown solutions that are such as individual performance contracts. This is an indication that the world recognizes our governance approach towards achieving community targets and delivering a better life for all. This is much appreciated. Africa has made a lot of progress in transforming agriculture. However, we still have some challenges. Some of them include insufficient investments, issues of agricultural mechanization, a limited number of youth in agriculture and professional farmers, climate change, and low capacities to cope with the price volatility and the requirement of international markets. To address these issues, policymakers must continue empowering of agricultural professionals, strengthening research with emphasis on data collection, analysis, and implementation of the results. We have also to increase our investment in agriculture, as well as promoting the use of modern technologies. In this regard, Rwanda appreciates IFPRI's partnership in the area of building technical skills for policy analysis, specifically competencies in data management, analysis, and interpretation with the cutting-edge tools, methods, and models. Rwanda looks forward to continuing its collaboration with IFPRI on our development journey through Rwanda Strategy Support Program. As I conclude, I would like to thank once again IFPRI for having produced this report, which is a very important tool for policymakers. I also thank our Ministry of Agriculture and Animal Resources and its partners for having successfully organized this important event. With these remarks, it is now my pleasure to declare the IFPRI 2019 Global Food Policy Report officially launched in Kigali, Rwanda. I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, your right honorable Prime Minister, for your inspiring presentation and keynote address. Thank you very much. Before we go on to the next part of the program, I would like to announce that there will be a group photo that will include the high table, the ministers that are present here in the room, as well as the ambassadors who have come here today. My information is that the photo will take place in the front of the room. Is this correct? I'm looking at my colleague from protocol. It's in the front, yes? Yes. Could I invite everybody to come to the front, please? Thank you.
So they are asking whether they can have a banners.
Well, that's that far away.
Okay,